Now the next class of drugs I want to talk to you about are called the SNRIs, and unlike the SSRIs, which are serotonin selective, the SNRIs also inhibit this reuptake inhibitor for serotonin, but also inhibit the reuptake inhibitor for norepinephrine. So they increase the amount of both of these neurotransmitters. And unlike the SSRIs, SNRIs are used to treat atypical depression and also anxiety. So what's the difference between atypical depression and normal depression? Well, atypical depression is the most common type, and it's classed as the ability to be able to react to positive things in your life and be able to experience a mood elevation. This is the so-called mood reactivity. And although it's transient, it's something you don't really see in normal depression. The other thing is there's a thing called lead-in paralysis, where you sort of feel a heavy sensation in your arms and legs. And there's also something called the reversed vegetative symptoms. So in depression, you have a loss of appetite, you start losing weight, you're finding it more difficult to sleep. In the case of atypical depression, this is reversed. So you might find that you're eating more, or you're sleeping more, those kind of things. So in this case, SNRIs might be useful for the treatment of atypical depression, but also anxiety. And this is through a similar mechanism to SSRIs. Okay, so for the next class of drugs, it's a drug class that isn't really used anymore for the treatment of depression, but it's something that you might see floating about, and they're called the tricyclic antidepressants, so the so-called Tcas. And these include things like amitriptyline, nortriptyline, doxepin, imoxapin, a load of different drugs. You may have also heard of clomipramine as well, and imipramine. Clomipramine is something that is used to treat OCD, and although it's not the first line treatment, because as I said, it does have a higher side effect profile than other drugs, it is something that is being used. So how do TCAs work? Well, they work in a very similar way to SNRIs in that they inhibit the reuptake of serotonin and norepinephrine. However, it's thought that there is a sort of a wider reaching effects of these drugs, and that's where these side effects come from. So they inhibit other kind of neurotransmitters in the brain, such as acetylcholine, the adrenergic receptors, which relates to norepinephrine, the histamine receptors. It's a so-called dirty drug because it has too many off-target effects. And this is why you don't really see it in the treatment of depression so often, because you need quite a high dose to treat the depression aspect. Instead, TCAs are more used for their ability to alleviate chronic pain. And the reason why they're used so often is because you need a much lower dose to treat pain compared to depression, and therefore you don't really get as many side effects from it. Okay, so for the last class of drugs that I want to talk to you about, these are the so-called atypical antidepressants. And these are relatively new compared to things like TCAs, but they still have quite a few other side effects that you need to think about. And the first is something called Mirtazapine. Now, Mirtazapine is something that is actually used for the treatment of anorexia. So how does Mirtazapine actually work? Well, it's thought that it inhibits a type of serotonin receptor, which I was talking to you about here. And these are called the serotonin 2 and 3 receptors. It's also thought to inhibit the alpha-2 adrenergic receptors in the brain as well. And this combined effect is thought to help treat depression, but also possibly anorexia. The next drug is something called bupropion. Now, bupropion is, you may have actually heard of it because it's used to help treat smoking cessation, to help you try and quit smoking, but it's also an atypical antidepressant. And bupropion, they don't really know how it works, but they do know that it increases the amount of norepinephrine and the amount of dopamine that's floating around in the brain. Bupropion can cause seizures in people with anorexia, and this is sadly not uncommon thing to see in an emergency department where someone with anorexia has taken this drug because they think it's an antidepressant. You know, they've just rummaged through someone's medicine cabinet, taken it, and have undergone a seizure. And these seizures can be really, really severe. So if you see it and you've got anorexia, please don't take it. The last atypical antidepressant is something called trazodone, which is thought to have a similar SSRI effect, but it also inhibits an alpha adrenal receptor, which is a kind of norepinephrine receptor in the brain, and also the 5-HT, the serotonin 2 receptor. And because it does have quite a few side effects, it's not really used to treat depression as much. It's more used to treat insomnia because, like the TCAs, you need a lower dose to treat the insomnia, so you're less likely to experience side effects. Now that's sort of a whirlwind tour through the drugs that are used to treat, you know, anxiety and depression. There are a load of other drugs that I could have talked to you about, and I could have also sort of delved more into the side effect profiles that you might want to know about as well. If you do want to know about these, please do let me know and I'll try and fit that into another video for the future. And if there are any other kind of drugs or treatments that you want me to talk about, please do let me know, because this is something that I'm reading up on a lot for the USMLE, so that's why it's sort of at my fingertips. I didn't really prepare for this video, and I didn't really have a script. I'm just sort of talking about what I know. So if you do want me to talk about anything, please do let me know, and I'm more than happy to help you guys out. But for now, thanks for watching.